The sack was wet with blood, dripping onto the dirt, and the rancher's hands shook when he untied the knot. He was down on one knee, boots planted in the dust, the other buried deep in shadow. No sound but the wind cutting across the dry land, whistling through broken fence posts. Somewhere far off, a crow let loose a cry, and then silence swallowed it whole. The sack sagged heavy in his grip, too heavy for grain, too heavy for anything that ought to be carried. Blood seeped through the burlap in slow, dark rivers, painting his knuckles, sliding down into the thirsty earth. He breathed hard, though he had walked no distance. His shoulders quivered, like he carried more than the sack, like something unseen pressed down on his back. A barefoot woman stood a few paces off. Her dress hung in tatters, edges torn like old curtains left to rot in the wind. Her hair clung damp to her face, though the air was dry. She didn't cry, she didn't blink. Her lips barely moved, but the words broke the silence like glass. "I'll never be clean again." The rancher froze, fingers half-locked in the knot. Her voice carried nothing sharp, just a dull weight, heavy as the sack itself. The flies had found them now, buzzing close, daring, drunk on the smell. They circled her pale feet, rose, and landed on the sack. The rancher's hands trembled worse. He pulled at the rope, rough fibers biting deep into calloused skin. The knot gave, slow as if the cord itself resisted. The woman turned her face toward the horizon. The light was going, sky burning down to embers, clouds stretched long and tired. But her eyes had no sky left in them, just a hollow dark, the kind you don't walk back from. The sack opened, just enough, a glimpse inside. He sucked in air through his teeth, sharp and quick. His head bowed low. Whatever he saw, he did not name it, couldn't. He pressed the burlap shut again, as if, by closing it, he could shut the whole world out. Her whisper still clung to the air. "I'll never be clean again." The rancher set the sack down in the dirt, slow, careful, like it might break the ground if dropped. He wiped his bloody hands against his shirt, but the stain only spread wider. His breath rattled, his eyes burned. He looked at her, standing there barefoot, silent, wrapped in the last light of day. Something fragile, something ruined. The wind picked up, dust swirled between them, dancing like ghosts caught in a storm they couldn't leave. The sack sagged at his feet, bleeding quiet, steady, and the land around them held its silence, waiting. The cabin door creaked when he pushed it open, wood groaning like an old wound. He stepped aside, letting her in first. She lingered a moment on the threshold, as if the dark might swallow her whole. Then she moved, barefoot against the floorboards, leaving pale smudges of dust behind. The sack he carried last. He set it down in the farthest corner, where shadows stretched and gathered. Neither of them looked at it, not directly, but the air bent toward it, heavy and still. He lit the lamp, its flame trembling in the glass. A softer glow rose from the hearth as he struck tinder, coaxing fire into being. The crackle of wood filled the silence. She stood near the basin. When he poured water in, the sound made her flinch, shoulders jerking as if struck. He said nothing. She pressed her hands into the cold water, scrubbed harder. Her skin turned raw, streaks of red spilling into the basin like smoke under glass. Her whisper came low, breaking on the edges. "I can't wash it off." The words hovered, fragile, aching. He didn't answer, just sat at the table, watching the fire lick upward, his jaw working, grinding silence into stone. The basin water grew cloudy. Still she kept at it, until her knuckles split and her breath shivered. Later, when he slid a tin plate across the table, she ate slow, trembling hands, eyes fixed on the wood grain, never his face. Every bite seemed a burden carried heavy down her throat. Her shawl clung to her shoulders, tight, pulled close as armor. She held it like others might a gun. Nights bled into one another, always the same rhythm, the hiss of fire, the rattle of wind against the cabin walls, the weight of things unspoken. Now and again, he'd catch her staring at the sack in the corner. Her gaze would fix, hard, until the fire popped and pulled her back. Then she'd clutch the shawl tighter, as though the cloth might shield her from what burlap could not. He never asked, not once. His tongue ached with questions, but he knew. Answers could break what little was holding her upright, and maybe break him too. One night, as the fire dipped low, the lamplight drew faint scars along her wrists, lines hidden until now, carved deep like trails through desert rock. She pulled her sleeve down quick, but not before he saw. He didn't look away, not fast, just enough to let her know he hadn't missed it. Then he turned back to the fire, and the silence stretched long. The sack lay where he had left it, shadow pooling out from under it like spilled ink. A presence, a reminder, a promise unspoken. The cabin walls groaned with the night wind. The woman's breath came soft, measured. The rancher's eyes stayed on the fire, though the sack pulled at him, called him, made his chest heavy with dread. He feared the truth inside it. But more than that, he feared the truth inside her. The flames sank low, ember red. The sack did not move, but its shadow grew long, reaching toward them both, and the room held its silence, waiting. Hoofbeats, low, steady, like a drumbeat rolling out of the darkening hills. The rancher stepped onto the porch, lantern glow brushing his shoulders. The woman stood behind him in the doorway, clutching her shawl so tight her knuckles showed white. Her breath hitched when the riders came into sight. 3 of them, shadows cut against a dying sky. They didn't hurry. Cruel men never do. Dust rose around their horses, drifting slow as smoke. One spat into the dirt before calling out, voice sharp with whiskey and a grin that wasn't kind. "Evenin', friend. We're here for what's ours." The woman flinched. The name they spat next made her fold into herself, as though the syllables were shackles thrown back on her shoulders. She pressed against the cabin wall, whispering something small, too soft for the men to hear. "Don't let them take me back." The rancher didn't answer. He just stood there, boots planted in dust, jaw locked tight. The tallest rider leaned forward, hat tipped low. "Don't make it hard." She ran, sure, but she didn't run empty. "That sack inside belongs to us." Silence stretched. The only sound was the slow creak of leather, horses shifting under their weight. The rancher's hand hovered near the revolver on his hip. Not touching, not yet. The choice weighed heavier than iron. The woman stepped forward now, barefoot in the dirt, trembling but stubborn as stone. "You can't have it," she whispered, though her voice shook. One of the men laughed, ugly and sharp. "Can't have it? Girl, we already own it, same as we own you." The air froze, the kind of stillness before a storm. Then, metal broke the silence. A revolver cocked. The sound rang louder than thunder. No one breathed. The sack lay just inside the doorway, shadows spilling out from its corners. One rider swung down, boots, crunching against gravel. He moved slow, like he had all the time in the world, and tore the burlap open with his knife. The woman gasped, stumbling back. The rancher's throat worked, but no word came. The sack spilled open. Not gold, not silver, not stolen treasure. A child's dress, torn at the seams. A doll, limp, blood dried into its faded cloth. Small things, but heavier than lead. The men smirked. One kicked the doll aside with his boot, laughing low. All this for scraps of rags? But the rancher fell to his knees. His hand brushed the little dress like it was holy, like touching it burned him and blessed him all at once. His shoulders shook. The fire in his chest broke through the silence in ragged breath. The woman's voice cracked behind him, sharp with sorrow. "It's all I had left." The riders laughed again, cruel and careless. But the rancher rose slow, like a mountain lifting through the dark. His revolver came into the lamplight, steady now. Between her and them, he stood. No words, just silence. And in that silence lay the choice already made. The wind kicked up, carrying dust across the yard, scattering ashes into the night. The doll lay half buried in dirt, its glass eyes staring cold into nothing. The standoff stretched, every breath drawn like a blade, and the land waited to see who would break first. The first shot split the night wide open. Lantern glass shattered, horses screamed into the wind. The cabin walls shook as if the storm itself had come down off the mountains. The rancher moved with no words, no warning, just steel pulled from leather, flames sparking at the muzzle. The yard lit in flashes, each burst carving faces out of the dark, cruel mouths twisted, eyes wide with whiskey and hate. The woman pressed against the cabin frame, her shawl clutched tight, her scream rising like a wounded bird. Not fear, not only fear, something deeper, breaking loose after being buried too long. "They laughed," she cried out between the thunder of guns. "They laughed while they put her in the dirt." Her voice cracked. Her whole body trembled. "My little girl, my baby. They threw her down, and I couldn't stop them. I can't wash it off. I can't. Another shot rang. Another man fell, heavy in the dust. The rancher's jaw was set like iron, eyes burning under the brim of his hat. Each pull of the trigger was not rage, but prayer. A wordless prayer carved out of smoke and fire, meant not for him, but for her, for what was stolen. The last rider staggered, hand pressed to his gut, blood pouring black in the lamplight. He stumbled near the sack, kicked it open wider. The child's dress spilled free again. The doll lay crooked in the dirt, its cloth already stained. Now fresh blood ran across it, soaking burlap, fabric, earth. The sack drank it all. The woman screamed once more, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was grief given voice, raw, ripping through her chest until the night itself seemed to cry with her. And then, silence. Gun smoke hung heavy, curling into the rafters of the porch. The only sound was her sobbing, wild at first, then breaking down into shivers and gasps. She stumbled forward, fell to her knees in the dirt, hands pressed into the blood-soaked sack, clutching it as though it were flesh and bone. Tears streaked her face, mixing with dust, with ash. The rancher lowered himself beside her. His revolver slipped loose from his hand, landing heavy in the soil. He didn't touch her, not yet, just knelt there, shoulders rising and falling, with the weight of breath. His silence spoke louder than words ever could. Her voice came softer now, broken and uneven. "She's gone. They took her. She's gone." He bowed his head, eyes closed. And for a long time, he didn't move, didn't try to wipe her tears or give false mercy. He just sat in that dirt, bearing it with her. The fire from the cabin licked brighter against the night sky, painting them both in flickers of orange and shadow. The storm clouds above rolled low, thunder rumbling like a drum too tired to strike again. The woman curled into herself, clutching the sack. But her sobs eased, not because the wound healed, but because the truth had finally spilled free. The rancher finally set his hand on the sack, beside hers, not taking it, not prying it loose, just sharing its weight. He couldn't cleanse her past. But maybe, just maybe, he could carry a part of it. The night wind swept across the yard, lifting dust, scattering smoke, pulling the last echoes of violence into the far horizon. The doll lay half-buried still, its bloodied face turned skyward, watching, waiting. And the land grew quiet again, as if holding its breath. The shovel bit into the earth. Cold dirt, damp beneath the crust, gave way one scoop at a time. The rancher worked slow, boots planted firm on the hillside, his breath fogged in the chill of dawn, each exhale rising like smoke into the pale light. The woman stood a few paces back, hands trembling, shawl wrapped loose now, not tight. She didn't move closer, but she didn't look away either, her eyes fixed on the small bundle he laid down gently, cloth, doll, scraps of what was left. The ground closed quiet over it. He pressed the soil flat with the back of his palm, then set a single stone at the head, a marker, plain but steady. Beside it, a lone wildflower bent in the morning wind, its fragile stems swaying but not breaking. He stayed crouched there for a long while, head bowed, hat brim shadowing his face. No prayer spoken, just silence, his only offering. The woman didn't wash that morning. Her endies were still raw, skin chafed and split. But when the sun climbed higher, she stepped into it, lifted her chin, and let the warmth touch her face. Her eyes closed, lashes catching light. For the first time, her shoulders eased, just a little. The cabin behind them stood quiet, smoke from the chimney thinning into blue sky. The sack lay abandoned by the doorway, empty now, its burden gone to earth. When she turned to leave, her steps were unsteady, but hers. The shawl hung loose, slipping from one shoulder, no longer clutched like armor. She paused once, voice low, soft as if speaking to the dust itself. "You can't clean me, but you can see me." Then nothing more, just the sound of her steps carrying her farther, down the slope, out across the plain. The rancher stayed where he was, hands deep in his pockets, watching her silhouette thin against the horizon. The flower on the hill swayed behind him, stubborn in the wind. "At last," he muttered, voice cracked and worn, "meant for no one but the empty land. Some stains ain't meant to wash out. Some are meant to be carried." His words drifted with the wind, caught in the grass, fading into the wide silence of morning. The camera of the world seemed to pull back then, across the dirt, across the cabin, across the lonely hill with its single flower, and the story held its breath, fade to quiet,